am Plese with Romini Street, and then Jason had given you a heads up. We're talking security today, but more importantly, how to be much more proactive in protecting your back-end systems. So joining me today is Gabe Dimeglio. He is Vice President, Executive Advisor for Security Services in the Office of the CTO here at Rimini Street. So Gabe, welcome.
Thanks, appreciate it so much.
Awesome, awesome. So for those of you who may not be familiar with Romini Street, just give you a brief background. We've been in business for 15 years, and we're the leading third-party support provider for Oracle and SAP ERP systems. That means that we run, support, and maintain these systems on behalf of our clients. That includes back office systems like Oracle eBusiness Suite, or Siebel, or JD Edwards, and PeopleSoft. We also support SAP ECC instances and SAP S/4HANA. We also support database workloads, and we're going to talk about that today. Most of our conversation today will really be around our security services. Part of my role here at Romini Street is working with our clients to help them get more value out of our services. So to prepare for our conversation, I actually reached out to many of our clients to understand what's top of mind for them and what challenges they're facing, specifically around security. So we're going to focus our conversation today in 3 areas. Number 1, Gabe and I are going to give you our observations of what we see happening in the market, specifically through the eyes and voices of our clients. Number 2, we're going to take you through the economics of traditional vendor patching. And then number 3, we're going to give you line of sight to new ways that our clients are deploying to be more proactive in protecting their back-end systems. And as Jason had alluded to, Gabe and I are definitely here to help you win prizes. So if Gabe and I say anything that sparks your interest, go ahead and punch your questions in the chat throughout our presentation today. So let me begin on what's happening in the market. Now, attacks are on the rise. I think that's just obvious, right? But if you look at Verizon's 2021 data breach investigations report, they surfaced a real key trend there. And that is internal errors win the award for actions that lead to exposure, right? So we're seeing increasing issues around internal errors. As a matter of fact, they're now equally as common as social breaches, and they're even more common than malware. So the report also surfaced the fact that this is ubiquitous across multiple industries, right? And of course, hacking remains higher, okay? And our clients, of course, nod their heads to us, say, this is definitely a concern, Anne, but in terms of internal errors, that goes off the table when they move to Romini Street for our services, and that's because of our SLA, our service level agreement. The reality is our clients have more things that they're worried about. So what they echo back to us in terms of concerns and challenges really falls into 3 areas or 3 buckets. Number 1, they're really weary about expensive upgrades to maintain compliance or to get access to security patches. They're just expensive. And let's face it, while your back-end systems and ERP systems may be your single source of truth in terms of your data strategy and they're mission critical, many of our clients really don't see those systems as a platform for innovation. And that means they want to reduce the overall operating costs associated with those systems. And we'll explore how we do that. Number 2, vendor patching is tedious. It does mean system downtime and productivity impacts. And Gabe's going to walk through some of the financial models we built with our clients. And then we're also going to walk through some ideas on how you could be more proactive. And then finally, number 3, if you look at the complexity with applying vendor patches, that you have to schedule the regression testing. It can be very complex and very tedious. So we're going to share some client stories about how they became a little bit more proactive in protecting their back-end systems. Okay, so let's look at number 1. So Gabe, I'm going to throw it to you, and let's look at the database layer.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Anne. So we went ahead and created a calculator here at Romini Street that we use to demonstrate to clients, to kind of give them a high-level overview of what we believe it actually costs them to stay current on these platforms and to apply traditional security patches. across their enterprise for the products that we'll support. And compare that to the cost of leveraging our security solutions. And the idea here is it shows or demonstrates operationally, what level of effort is required in order to achieve a specific type of security strategy. So whether that's just the cost of patching, or whether that's the cost of using our security controls, for example, as a replacement using a virtual patching type of methodology, really our solutions are more about zero-day security protection. So it's common weakness enumeration protection. But the bottom line is leveraging these controls or using these tools as a mechanism to proactively protect against the exploitation of vulnerabilities that otherwise you would be focused on patching. This calculator is actually very, very detailed, and we do give this to our clients to leverage as ways that they can actually validate the specific data points. So we account for everything from blended resource modeling and cost to the versions of the databases and all the steps that are required to upgrade them, or applications as well. And what we find is that on average, most organizations are paying somewhere between 1x and 2.5x whatever their annual maintenance is. So if you're paying, let's say, $10 million a year in annual maintenance for your Oracle support contract, you're probably paying 10 million to 25 million or so a year if you were to annualize this over the cost of all of those upgrades and all the various projects. I mean, massive ERP systems like eBusiness Suite make that very, very clear, right? I don't know anyone who can do an eBusiness Suite upgrade for under a couple $1 million in under a couple of years. But the point is that this is a way to actually identify the costs associated, to determine exact, allocation of resources, and then you can look at it and say, well, is this worth it or not? And that's really the idea behind this. And again, just really makes it painfully obvious for a lot of organizations that there has to be a better way. And we'll talk about one of those better ways. I'll give you an example on the next slide. Actually, we have one of our clients, been clients for many, many years. One of the world's largest tire manufacturers. Great organization to work with. They had, again, they were facing that kind of scenario. Do I stay under vendor support where I'm going to be forced to upgrade all of these databases and this infrastructure in order to be able to just get security updates? Because the Oracle models, you go under sustaining support, you don't get any new fixes, including security updates, right? And that's very common for a lot of software vendors. Obviously, they want to keep you on that treadmill to reduce their costs of maintenance. So they're limiting ultimately their exposure by ensuring that everybody stays consistent by staying in this higher tier. So with these guys, we actually have, again, an example of an organization that we're providing support for and protecting thousands of databases globally. Different mixture of databases. There's a lot of Oracle, there's some Sybase, there's some Microsoft SQL, Sapana, that kind of stuff. And using our tools, what they found was that they were able to obviously not only save by coming to Rimini Street, but they're able to proactively protect these systems, and to do so in a non-intrusive way, right? That's the key. They use those databases for every aspect of their business, from intellectual property to operationally as far as manufacturing. And if they were to have any one of those databases, like there's specific databases that if they went down in the manufacturing process, they would have to discard every tire they made at that factory. I think 70,000 tires in one day, right? So again, this is around cost control, increasing operational availability. And what they in particular loved about the tools was not only the ability to protect the databases, proactively defend against the types of things that vendors are traditionally patching, if you will, with their security updates, but to actually integrate that to their security operations. So there was an increase in security value that they got, decrease in costs, increase in operational availability, increase in security value, because now they can actually take and see the types of things that might be malicious or bad in that environment, and they can correlate that to other things. So the security operations can respond faster. They can address those particular concerns much more efficiently. So huge benefits there. Actually, let's go to the next slide as well, if we would. So for all of our clients, we actually remember what we're doing here, right? We actually focus on the applications, middleware, and databases. Those are the products that we're supporting, and that's where we actually really think about how to protect this infrastructure from a services perspective, right? That's our main mission in life. We obviously advise, and in fact, advisory services are always included for all of our clients. And yes, we do advise on how to secure hosts and network communications, you name it, all that fun stuff. But we really are focused on the things that are particularly important for application infrastructure down through the database. So the way that we've actually broken our products out, when we think about it as three legs of the stool. You have applications and middleware and database. We have application and middleware security as one feature, advanced application middleware security. So the other solution we have is advanced database security, and that's where I was using the example of the tire manufacturer just a moment ago. Both of these solutions, these cost calculations are applicable to, and we find that not only are we proactively preventing exploitation of vulnerabilities with these tools and using these methodologies, but again, leveraging just the further operational availability and cost savings to the organizations is key. So, Anne, any other thoughts you wanted to address?
No, I think we're good. I think we're good. Could you dig into, Gabe, a little bit more about how the advanced database security works? I know that's technology that does virtual patching, right? So it continually scans the memory of the database to look for anomalies, right? And then
yeah. I mean, in essence, what it really is it's called virtual patching, which is highly dependent on database activity monitoring, right? So it's essentially looking at the execution plan of the database, and we see all of the applicable session information. So you have users, applications, ports, protocols, all that fun stuff. But you see the SQL, right? And so we can actually simply snapshot or analyze the SQL and say, wow, this is going to be bad. It might go wipe someone's schema, or it may cause the JVM to run an OS execution of some type, right? So we just block that. And in doing so, what we find is it's funny that every time between these different types of platforms, every time there's a new exploit or new proof of concept out there in the wild that's affecting these platforms, our solution's already proactively blocking. We don't have to make any changes. You don't need to go patch anything. You don't need to apply new updates.
There's no downtime.
No downtime.
Yeah, that's key. That's key. And the application and middleware is technology that we OEM. It's a combination of open source, right, technology, and we've been OEM these services now for over 8 years. And the thing that's really cool about the application and middleware security is it's 0 day, right? Because vendor patching is known vulnerabilities.
And I apologize for coughing, but here's the key with the advanced application and middleware security. What that really is that is runtime application self-protection, but purpose-built for Java-based or interpreted language-based applications. So thinking about Java, we also do .NET, CLR, but again, we're mostly supporting Oracle here, right? So it's Java world. And again, it's the exact same thing. When we look at the hundreds of different variations of exploits that have affected Oracle products, compromised tens of thousands of WebLogic servers, for example, that were fully patched, right? Our clients using those solutions were already proactively protected against those things. So they didn't have the same scenario where they're running and worrying about how to deal with this new crypto or ransomware outbreak. Our clients were already protected. Different approach.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and again, because Rimini Street's business model is, instead of having Oracle maintain your systems, it's actually Rimini Street. So we take on that risk. So these types of services are critical. So Jason, let me kind of throw it back to you. I do see a number of questions that are queuing up in the Q&A. So Jason, I'm going to have you come off mute. Can you maybe read a couple of those questions, and Gabe and I can maybe interact a little bit, then we can continue on with the balance of the presentation.
More than happy to, yes. So we started off with, do you care what environment Oracle and SAP are deployed on currently? Can you also manage licensing?
Do we care what environment they're deployed on? Was that the question?
That is the question.
Yeah. Yeah, rule of thumb is as long as we have access to an operating system, it doesn't matter. We don't care where it is, right? So if you're thinking about cloud versus on-prem, then infrastructure is the way to go. So for example, let's talk about your databases. If you're on AWS, right, on databases, yes, we can protect your infrastructure, your databases, if they're on EC2, but if they're RDS, then no, we don't have access to an operating system, if you will, to control or deploy the solutions against. So that's really, as long as it's infrastructure as a service or it's pretty much anywhere else, it's not a database or an application like a SaaS model, then we're good to go.
Right.
And
Yeah, the second part of that question, Gabe, I got it, is from a licensing perspective, clients that move from SAP or Oracle still maintain ownership, right, and, of the perpetual licenses that they paid SAP and Oracle for. So what changes here is who's doing the maintenance for your systems. In this case, it's Rimini Street, and we've been doing this for 15 years. So clients will archive the software, right, that they've and all of the releases that they have access to and they paid for, and then archive is available while on Romini Street. Okay, Jason, let's take one more question, then we'll continue.
Happy to. Harry says, I agree patching is costly and very resource heavy. Using your advanced model, is your pricing fairly linear per the model you showed? What are the major factors you take into consideration when pricing services?
so it's actually really simple. We actually just need to understand what the instance count is. You know, how many instances are we going to be protecting? And that's on the database side. And then on the advanced application and middleware security tool side, that's just a server-based count. So if you have an operating system that's running an application or some middleware, whatever, that is the count. That's the factor. And what we do find is that in general, the cost of the security solutions are a fraction of the savings that people get by coming to Romini Street. Remember, if you're spending, you know, $10 million a year with Oracle, you're going to come and you're going to save $5 million. You're going to spend $5 million with us. You're going to save $5 million with them. You might spend $500,000 on security solutions. It just depends. But those solutions, again, are they're not just, and don't think them simply as a replacement for CPUs or security patches, because they're not. They're way beyond that, much more. So these are actually enterprise grade security controls that you're able to leverage on top of our support services for, again, a fraction of the savings that you're realizing by coming to Romini Street. So
right, plus the automation too. So let's continue. Yeah, let's continue on and the balance of the presentation. Then we'll revisit some of the questions. These are really good questions. Maybe some will get answered as we move on. So the second concern that our clients service back to us is really about, you know, vendor patching means system downtime. So Gabe walked us through the model, right, and what the operational and financial impact could be for that, right? That's working capital. That's working capital that you could spend, right, to be more proactive in security, right? But what I also find, and Gabe, I know you see this, is that when clients come to Rimini Street, they may have a false sense of security. And what do I really mean by that? That means that, I mean, if you look at Oracle and SAP and their patching model, right, the reality is they're always late to the game, right? So if we identify a vulnerability, what typically happens is that it's about 12 to 18 months before the vendor actually issues a patch to address that vulnerability, right? So that vulnerability is not new. So it's been out there since day one. And my key point here is that if you are dependent on vendor patching to protect your systems, then you're already behind the curve. So Gabe, I'm going to have you share another client story that was actually in that situation.
Oh yeah, MCClatchy. So yeah, that was a scenario where just using our standard included, right? No additional cost advisory services as a Rimini Street client. We had sent MCClatchy an advisory on some exploit behavior that was occurring in the wild that we believe could have affected them. And they were a new, pretty new client. They had been on board for PeopleSoft for some duration of time, maybe 6 months to a year. But we sent them this report, and they looked at it and went, "Oh wow, this is definitely a problem. We want to go ahead and fix it." So, you know, our report includes guidance on how to fix it. Here's how you actually remediate this issue, and here's how you can prove it, right? Here's where the exploit code is, and we guided them on that process. That led ultimately into us providing them with a security assessment. Now, that's also something that's included with our support services. A client, you know, signs up, we do provide we might call a higher level security assessment of the products that we're supporting. We just want to understand the controls that are there, you know, what types of methodologies are you using to secure really the applicable domains of these platforms. And we did identify through there that there were several areas where there were definitely opportunities for improvement, if you will. But the main thing that MCClatchy wasn't really a fan of from the Oracle perspective, again, was they were looking for a way where, well, can't we just proactively fix these things? Can't we? I don't want to have to like keep adding, you know, doing the same thing that Oracle does, and you know, releasing, you know, doing blacklists of commands and parameters. I don't want to have to sit here and play with regex and restart the systems and see what broke. To which we said, yeah, I mean, we do. We have this great security tool, this AAMS tool. And so I think they talked to a couple of our other clients about it, realized that, yeah, once this thing was in, it was just like, it's often referred to as like a game changer. But to us, we profile this thing so that it's kind of a fire and forget missiles, the way to think about it, as long as you profile it properly. And that's what we did, right? We went in with them, showed them how to profile it. They procured the tool, implemented the solution. And the great thing about it is that, yeah, they're no longer worried about doing reboots or changing anything or you know, having to do continuous testing every quarter or every single time there's another blacklist that comes out or whatever the patch may be doing at that point in time. So highly effective tool, definitely increased, again, operational availability. Much easier than of course, continuing to upgrade PeopleSoft platform, much less just trying to apply all those patches. So,
awesome. So a little secret to coder ring, the AAMS acronym on this slide is Advanced Application and Middleware Security. So sorry, we tend to use a lot of acronyms. So I think, Gabe, you've done a terrific job of kind of helping us understand, you know, what the challenges are. Let's get to our final challenge here. And that is, you know, let's face it, with current vendor models, it's very complex, right? When you take systems down, there's often a moment of prayers and maybe an emotional moment, right? When you bring the systems back up and you're really hoping to see the blinky lights, right? I mean, so I'm not oversimplifying this, but, you know, because we're in the support business, we've seen a lot, right? And this is very complex. It's very tedious. And a part of our presentation was really to lean into the fact that there are more modern and more proactive solutions available. So let's take our audience here through one more client story, and then we'll conclude and open up to more questions.
Sure. So, yeah, Tempe, great city, awesome people, by the way, big fan. They were in the same type of scenario, right? They want to come to Romini Street, definitely want to save the money. They, I guess, had some pretty bad experiences with some upgrades historically, and you know, definitely had some disappointment in kind of the Oracle support model, which is, you know, well, go do this first and then call us later and we'll see if we'll try to help you fix it type of thing. And that led to some real availability challenges. Again, it was just a matter of looking for stability, but again, looking for security. How do we be more effective? How do we be more proactive? And that's why they used our tool. So yeah, you know what? They had to, using advanced application middleware security, when you do the initial integration into your application, and that's what it is, we are controlling and profiling the application, right? We're integrating directly into it to apply these security controls. You have to restart the application. Well, for them, the goal was, well, we want that to be our last restart for quite some time. So what they particularly appreciate about the tool, what most people really do, is the changes that you make in configuration. If I want to create and release a brand new abstract rule or what we call an armor rule for the platform, and that stands for Abstract Rules Modeling Runtime. For an application, I can apply that, or I can turn rules off and on. I can change things for the purposes of testing if I want to prove out that an exploit's efficient, and turn a rule off so that I can run that exploit, right? And then turn it back on to show that, yes, I fixed that problem, that exploit's no longer successful. That's dynamic, right? And that was the most important thing, was not having to pray every time that they restart the application, that you can make those operational moves, those changes, without having to affect the availability of the platform. And it's completely, your users are oblivious to such behaviors. And that's always one of the big things, is user complaints. Gosh, my users are going to scream if we make any kind of change. Well, we do that all the time. Our clients are able to do that, and they never have those negative effects. And that's really the point. That was one of the big things for Tempe. So.
Yeah, that's awesome, right? I know too that the compliance people tend to get happier too, because the advanced database security, the management console gives you the ability to print the reports out. You just check the box with security out and compliance people too. So I remember that was a huge advantage for City of Tempe as well.
That's right. That's right.
So let's bring it home here. So how does this work? So I know there's a number of questions in the Q&A. We're going to get to those. So if you look at the bottom half of the screen here, you look at a traditional software vendor bundle. In this case, it's SAP and Oracle. 15 years ago, Rimini Street moved to break that bundle, meaning that many companies traditionally go to Oracle and SAP. They pay Oracle and SAP perpetual licenses for the software, right? And then they used to pay Oracle and SAP to maintain that software, right? And to keep with compliance, right? Well, what we've noticed is a lot of IT leaders and executives, again, don't see those back office systems as platforms for innovation. So why should they continue to pay these vendors to maintain them? Now, here's where Rimini Street is different. Now, Gabe had alluded to this, and it's true. For a pool of about 70 Rimini Street clients, on average, they were paying SAP and Oracle $5 million. Now, when they moved to Romini Street, that price went down to $2.5 million because we have a different business model than SAP and Oracle. We're not trying to harvest you to their SaaS or cloud, right? So we're typically, in terms of unlocking working capital, CFOs love our story and our service. We're different, right? Because we do support customizations. So one of our Oracle EBS clients, a very large multinational company, when they came to us, they had 15 million lines of customized code. Oracle Maintenance doesn't support customizations. We do. That's what makes us different, is the engineering capacity we have at Rimini Street. These are engineers that have been in the business for over 15 years. They know how Oracle and SAP software is designed to work. Many of them actually launched PeopleSoft and Siebel and JD Edwards systems to begin with. And I had mentioned that when clients come to Rimini Street, they archive the software that they paid for. So you still have access to that. And what really makes us different is we automate your tax, legal, and regulatory updates as well. We're a high-touch model. We don't work out of contact centers or call centers. That's not a part of our model. From day one, 15 years ago, every single one of our engineers works remotely. We have a follow the sun model. And the reason why we have that distributed model is because one of the benefits of coming to Rimini Street is you tell us what a P1 is, a priority 1 is, or a priority 4 is. And the engineering capacity and talent and automation we have to swarm these cases and tickets is really industry award winning. And then, as Gabe had alluded to, we have our security overlay services, which is a key part of how we deliver our services. If we're going to fortify these systems and maintain these systems, we're going to make them more secure. Couple more comments here. You did see in some of the client examples that some of our clients have initially come to Rimini Street for maintenance, where they replace Rimini in the overall equation. So you remove Oracle for support, you put Rimini Street in. Many of these clients who come to our service, or come to Rimini Street rather, they typically have contracted with a systems integrator or an AMS provider to run their systems. So we've had a front row seat over the past 15 years to exactly how a traditional SI, how their service delivery model really has diminished in terms of service quality. So if you look at the top part of the slide, a traditional SI or AMS vendor, this is typically their bundle. So this is Wipro, Cognizant, TCS, a lot of the outsource vendors, right? So they typically do management consulting, they do digital implementations, they may be a great fit for you for DevOps capacity, but they're really under significant margin pressure for their managed services. So Rimini Street in the past 5 years has expanded our catalog to not just replace Oracle as a part of your vendor mix, we actually can replace the managed service provider for on-site run and maintain. All right, so Gabe, I'm going to hand it back to you for just one more slide. If you can help our audience understand the overall service portfolio and how your team works.
Well, yeah, so from a security perspective, right, we actually have kind of 3 different pillars, if you will, but the key is what's included. Like when you join Rimini Street, we're supporting Oracle or SAP or whatever it may be for you, right? So with that, you do have access to pretty much anything. I'll put it this way: the easy way to think about it is if it's thought process, if it's knowledge, if it's expertise based on the 4,000 clients that we've had over the years, and you know, understanding what works, what doesn't work so well, what are the pitfalls that people might come across in specific use cases, and being able to guide you on that. That's included, that's free. So whether that's in the form of assessments, part of your strategic road mapping initiative, you know, really thinking through how you're going to protect this infrastructure for some given duration of time, that's always included. And the reason being, and I don't recall, Ann, I'm sorry if you covered this or not, but when you come to Rimini Street, we guarantee that we'll support whatever version of a product you bring to us for up to 15 years.
Yeah.
Right? So we guarantee that. And obviously we're motivated to do that. The longer you're a client, the better. But how in the world do you do that? That's why we have these included services where we focus on those areas, thinking through how to successfully leverage and maximize the existing investments you already have. So we send out reports around you know, threat intelligence, industry analysis, what's going on, what affects the specific products that you're running, and what are the things we recommend you do to protect those. We review those with our clients. You have a question, you have a case, you need help. You just submit a case and it gets triaged to my team. I have a global team, security architects and engineers all over the world. So all that stuff's included. Really the way to think about it is what's not included, that's where we're delivering a product, like our advanced database security and our advanced application middleware security. Those are an added cost. But other than that, it's all there. So
yeah, awesome, Gabe. Thank you. I think we're ready to open up to questions here. Just to bring it home, after 15 years, we've actually returned $5 billion to the market we've created. So Rimini Street has a very, very good reputation at unlocking working capital and fortifying your systems. I think you kind of got that from our presentation. All right, Jason, I don't know how much time we have left today. Do you want to open up to a couple more questions? I see a lot in the queue.
We've got 16 questions to tackle here. So yes, let's try and get as many as possible. We've got 9 minutes to get through as many we possibly can. So first one, who's responsible for testing the environment before a patch is deployed?
So we have 2 different models, right? When you use our security solutions, typically what this is a model where we don't just throw binaries at you. We actually have a full onboarding program, and we work with your team. There's generally going to be a couple people from your organization that we actually teach how to leverage these solutions. And we run this full project with the goal being to walk you through step by step, understanding and explaining what we're doing, why, during the build out in a non-production environment. And we teach your team, right? So we're teaching you how to fish is the way that we think of it, so that you become able to stay dynamic, right? If you're making changes, if you're spinning up new databases all the time, just being able to add that as a part of your standard processes. That's your team. And it's the same as if you were, you know, from a responsibility perspective, if you're applying patches, running upgrades, all that stuff, it's just a lot less work. It's a different methodology, but that is the standard delivery method. We do also have the ability to provide these solutions as a full-blown implementation and managed service, where we essentially provide for the care and feeding. We implement, deploy the solutions, we do all the integrations, so SIM integrations, LDAP, whatever that looks like for your organization, and then we provide all the care and feeding. But that care and feeding, the full package like that, that is obviously an added cost. It's not horribly expensive, but it's an option.
Next one. What's your magic of making patching not intrusive when it requires user testing and fixed enterprise applications interoperability conflict?
Well, so, okay, in the context of using advanced application and middleware security solution, for example, that solution, again, we're working within the compilation pipeline directly. So if you think about it, what we're doing is we are effectively leveraging the compilation pipeline to make dynamic changes, just like the compiler does as it runs your application all the time, right? It's constantly doing things like whether it's going to be rescanning code syntax and finding bugs, or it's monitoring the byte stream, specifically looking at memory management, right? Constantly moving things, garbage collection, all that fun stuff. We're doing the same thing. We're leveraging that capability, and that gives us the ability to make a lot of changes to the application fully dynamically. There are some things, obviously, where the way that a certain library may work might require that that library is reloaded, but that's not the common use case, right? So from what I've seen, that's 5% of the time. 95% of the time, we can make all these changes, new business logic, new interfaces, whatever, and we can do that fully dynamically. Then that's the magic. It's the compiler is a beautiful thing.
Excellent. Love this question here. I don't know if you'll have an answer, but we'll see what you got here, Gabe. What is more secure, cloud or on-premise? I have a situation to move our data warehouse to cloud versus on-premise. We are investigating it at this moment.
What's more secure is whatever you have the most visibility and control into, right? I mean, that, just to be very vaguely clear about that. You know, with these cloud services, you basically have services that are at your disposal, and you have SLAs, and you have very limited visibility to their backend controls, who's doing what. And again, it's another supply chain challenge where you have visibility issues as far as what are, you know, what are their processes. And we saw that we've actually seen this become a problem quite a bit. So the more that you have control of something in your own environment, that's fantastic. Now, does that mean you can't leverage, you know, cloud infrastructure and controls in a secure manner? No, of course not, but just understand there are some differences in the things that are out of your hands that you know could potentially cause a shocker one day. You just,
right.
You know,
let me take a swing at that too. Is that, I mean, obviously database workloads, well, OLTP, you know, and ERP workloads are very heavy, right? They're very IO sensitive. They require a lot of compute and a lot of horsepower. That's why they're typically on-prem, right? You got workloads like dev and test, you got data warehouses that maybe lend itself to cloud. Look very, very, very closely at Equinix. So their co-location provider, they actually provide direct connect, which obviously when you have an ERP workload, it's, you know, it's latency sensitive. Equinix provides really good connectivity to clouds, Azure, Google, you know, so I would look at that because you're going to have to look at the latency costs and the compute costs too, as well. And they do have secure, different types of security offerings as well that our clients have deployed.
Yeah, it's important to understand what all those options are, though, and to understand, again, the shared responsibility model is fantastic, right? Understanding very clearly what you have control over versus what they do, but then you have to account for that through your information security management system. Right? You have to understand the risk, document it, have a response plan in place. A lot of considerations, obviously.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Might be able to squeeze two more in here. Another great question here. Has zero-day protection been successful 100% of the times in the past? If not, can you please share the stats on success?
Sure. So, okay, I'll give you some stats. So the majority of the patches that you're seeing from Oracle nowadays are related to insecure deserialization-based attacks. They have a standards-based issue, which they're fixing as a part of Project Amber. You can go and Google, Java serialization, horrible mistake, and you'll see the chief Java architect from Oracle talking about this, right? The challenges there. And they have given you the ability to leverage filtering or blacklisting of commands via regex. That's also in the same articles you'll find. The problem is that it's gone from 40–50% of the patches to now we think almost as high as 70%. So think about 400 patches each quarter coming out, and 60–70% of those are just blacklisting commands and parameters because it would break the application otherwise. And you see these things over and over and over again. The easiest way to RCE a box and deploy ransomware crypto miner is that exact flaw. Because of how our solution, our AAMS solution works, yeah, it's been 100% effective against every single one of those. We've been monitoring these issues for years now, and we send reports out that in our exploit reports that show exploits or POCs of these reverse engineer patches, whatever it is, we actually show, here's the issue, here's how you manually fix it, put in the regex, here's some regex you can use, or here's how you can harden the environment so it's this type or class is not applicable in the future. Then there's a confirmation of our solution working. We've had to do one update or one actual report where we said, okay, there's a new rule available, go apply it, and here's how you do it. Every other report has said, here, yes, it's already confirmed, but here's where the exploit is, go run it and go prove it for yourself, and here's all the steps just to make sure you do have the rules on and the configuration proper. And if you have any questions, just reach out to us. So yeah, it is, I'll put it this way, if you want stats, you're looking at thousands and thousands of patches that still aren't fixing the actual problem versus our solution, which is required basically no change. It's a very different approach with a very different result.
Awesome.
Excellent. Well, that actually brings us right up to time. So thank you very, very, very much, both Anne and Gabe, not only obviously for your insights during the presentation itself, but also for answering those questions so candidly. For the 13 questions we didn't get to, don't worry, folks. We have made a note of them. We'll obviously share with Gabe and Anne, and they'll be able to follow up with you. And please find them on LinkedIn. You've got questions, find them on LinkedIn, reach out to them on LinkedIn. That's the way we can connect virtually. So make sure you do that. I'd like to obviously, as always, ask the audience to now join me in a bit of a virtual round of applause for Anne and Gabe. Really appreciate that.